Who's Masachika is an ugly virgin and a loser otaku till the most admired girl in school falls for him. However, she isn't just any admired girl. She's so beloved that all the students gaze at her giant and lean on the ground she walks on. One morning, Walmart Leonardo DiCaprio approaches, reconsidering if his $1 haircut is enough to win her over. But Alia, the popular girl, immediately rejects him. Attempting to save face, he tries to get her phone number, but Alia destroys his ego by bluntly stating she has no interest in him, leaving him speechless. The rest of the school loses any hope of dating her since she just roasted the most sought-after boy in school. Later, Alia arrives in class to find Masachika catching up on sleep. She asks if Masachika stayed up late watching anime. Masachika doesn't react because he's sleeping at his desk. Alia nudges his chair to wake him and questions if he stayed up late watching anime again. He admits to it, but explains he had something important to do afterward. Upon noticing that he did, she scolds him for never learning, as he doesn't sleep well. Masachika explains that the anime ended at 1 a.m. and he discussed it with a friend for 2 hours. She thinks he's out of his mind for doing such a thing, to which he responds that if expressing your passion, regardless of the time or place, defines madness, then he admits he's insane. At that moment, Masachika starts yawning, making Alia blush slightly. When he inquires about what she said, she dismisses it as nothing and mockingly calls him pathetic. Their first class is chemistry, a subject in which they share a strong connection. When Masachika realizes he has forgotten his textbook, he pairs up with Alia to share hers as the teacher conducts the lesson. Struggling to stay alert, Masachika eventually nods off, prompting Alia to jab him with her pen. This causes him to raise his hand, and when the teacher calls on him for an answer, Masachika looks to Alia for assistance. She directs him to a response, which he confidently recites, only to be completely incorrect. The teacher then turns to Alia for the right answer, which she provides instantly. Masachika feels utterly betrayed and demands to know why she would set him up like that. Alia claims she was merely pointing to the question number, but Masachika is convinced she's being deceptive, especially with that mischievous grin. She then repeats the word in Russian, catching Masachika off guard. When he asks what she says she calls him an idiot. However, Masachika has a secret. He's understood her Russian all along, and she was actually calling him adorable. This turns his entire world upside down as he tries to decipher her intentions, but she keeps acting clueless. He can understand her because he used to play with a Russian girl during his childhood, yet he never imagined he'd be rizzed by a Russian beauty who is unaware of his comprehension skills. If he confessed his understanding, she'd likely die of embarrassment, and he can't afford the funeral costs. Later, Alia catches Masachika using his phone and reminds him it's only for emergencies, but he brushes her off. Annoyed, Alia grabs the phone to check what he's up to and sees a silver-haired moon goddess on his screen. She returns the phone, irritated, and switches to Russian, mentioning her own silver hair and accusing him of cheating. Masachika understands her and starts to falter, but when he asks for clarification, she calls him a loser. The flustered virgin immediately loses his train of thought and begins to complain about Alia's rudeness in calling him a loser. Alia simply looks away, realizing there's no hope for him. Later, Masachika has lunch with his friends when they see the student council members enter. Alia, Yuki, and Maria, Alia's sister. The boys agree that the Kujo sisters are stunning, but Maria rejects everyone who asks her out, claiming she's already with someone. Alia teases that Takeshi has no chance with Maria because his head resembles a doorknob, prompting Takeshi to accuse her of being smug just because she's friends with Alia. Meanwhile, the girls look for a place to sit. When Yuki notices Masachika's disinterested expression, she asks if they can join them. The boys agree, so the girls sit with them. Yuki notices that Masachika has ramen, just like her, but when she realizes it should have been spicier, she jokes about bringing it up at the student council meeting. Masachika warns her not to mix personal preferences with public issues, but she fondly reassures him she's just joking. At that moment, Alia gives Yuki a disdainful look and asks about their friendship. Yuki explains that they've known each other since childhood, having gone to the same preschool. When Masachika asks if the girls are friends too, Yuki says she'd like to be, but Alia warns her that being friends with her isn't exactly fun. The boys then decide to take their lunch elsewhere, with Takeshi commenting that the girls are too dazzling for their virgin eyes. After shedding the burden, Yuki inches closer to Masachika and inquires if he has given any thought to her suggestion about joining the student council. Masachika responds that he has no plans to join the council. Yuki then tells Alia that Masachika was her vice president in middle school and is highly competent. Alia switches to Russian, remarking that Yuki doesn't need to inform her of that. Later, Yuki bids farewell, and Alia expresses surprise that any girl would want to be friends with them. Masachika points out that Alia is his friend, which astonishes her. She agrees and abruptly walks away, leaving Masachika puzzled. That night, Masachika dreams nostalgically of playing with a blonde Russian girl from his past. Upon waking, he recalls how he was such a simp that he learned Russian just to communicate with her, yet her name escapes him. The next morning, Masachika arrives at class early and cleans up before anyone else shows up. Alia is the first to arrive and sarcastically comments that hell must have frozen over for him to be up so early. Noticing the dirt on her socks, Masachika asks if she stepped in a puddle, but she sits down and explains that a passing truck splashed her with mud. She abruptly shifts the topic and inquires if he will finally join the student council, but he adamantly responds that he would rather eat nails. Alia tries to ask another question but becomes flustered and tells him to forget it. She then starts to take off her socks, causing Masachika's knees to go weak. Noticing his bashfulness, Alia gets a sly idea and instructs Masachika to fetch a spare sock from her locker. Reluctantly, Masachika agrees, but when she asks him to put it on her, he hesitates. Alia insists it would be a small reward for his help. Switching to Russian, she adds it's for her benefit too. Masachika begins to wonder if she's just using him to vent her frustrations. When he asks what she said, she claims she called him a coward. Determined, Masachika grabs her foot and follows her request. Alia starts to panic, saying she wasn't ready, but Masachika urges her to stay still. Unfortunately, it accidentally touches a sensitive area, prompting her to kick him in the face, giving him a brief glimpse of heaven. He falls but feels it was worth it. Later, Alia gives him the cold shoulder. Trying to make amends, he approaches her to apologize, but she calls him a foot fetish in Russian. She then says she's not angry and apologizes for kicking him. When she checks if he's okay, he deflects and thanks her for the glimpse of heaven. Alia, utterly mortified, punches him before bolting away. He pursues her through the school corridors, and after a chaotic chase lasting about 10 minutes, she finally relents. Masachika, realizing he had overstepped, apologizes and presents her favorite drink as a gesture of reconciliation, a red bean soup. Touched by his thoughtfulness, Alia switches to Russian and offers him a sip. Masachika freezes, comprehending that she is suggesting an indirect kiss. As usual, she changes her words in translation, assuming he doesn't understand a single word she says, and laughs softly to herself. He screams in his head, saying that he understands all of it. A few days go by until one afternoon, Yuki calls out to Masachika and asks him to help her tidy up the council room. He reluctantly agrees as his idle nature isn't accustomed to physical work, but he meets up with her nonetheless. They start chatting when suddenly Alia emerges from behind some boxes, looking quite irritated at the sight of Yuki and Masachika's closeness. He quickly realizes that Yuki orchestrated this entire situation to mess with him, knowing Alia likes him. They continue cleaning with Yuki chatting away while Alia appears increasingly annoyed and tells Masachika to focus more on the task at hand. Yuki senses the perfect moment, excuses herself, and leaves. Masachika then hears Alia mutter in Russian that she, too, wants some attention. She keeps telling him to come closer in Russian, smugly thinking she's throwing herself at him while he remains clueless. Meanwhile, Masachika wonders about the boldness of such thoughts. Fortunately for him, they finish the remaining work quickly, and just as he is about to leave, the door opens. A tall senior walks in, surprised to see the room already clean. Yuki tells him that Masachika helped, and he thanks Masachika, introducing himself as Kenzaki, the president of the student council. He informs Masachika that he has heard a great deal about him from both Alia and Yuki. Masachika starts feeling uneasy and decides to leave, but Kenzaki stops him, stating that since Masachika helped them after school, he will buy him dinner tonight. Masachika courteously declines the offer, insisting he was merely assisting friends. Before he can leave, though, Yuki interjects and tells him he should accept the offer since he would have to cook for himself at home anyway. Kenzaki ultimately makes the decision for them and also invites both Yuki and Alia to join them for dinner later that evening. They'd all head to a diner and sit down, with Kenzaki again expressing his gratitude to Masachika for his help with the council work. Yuki mentions that Masachika is quite adept at physical tasks, completing them swiftly, and is also a skilled negotiator. Kenzaki immediately recognizes his talent and offers him a position on the student council. Masachika once again politely declines, stating that he is done with student council work forever as he didn't particularly enjoy it during middle school. Kenzaki agrees that it is indeed a lot of work, but adds that it comes with its own benefits, telling Masachika that being on the student council means he has an automatic recommendation to join the best colleges in the country. Despite this, Masachika remains uninterested, preferring to watch anime and enjoy a carefree life. Unfortunately for him, Yuki keeps pressuring him, insisting they should run for student council president again, just as they did in middle school. Masachika firmly declines this time, while Kenzaki informs him that Yuki will face stiff competition since Alia is also planning to run for president. Surprised, Masachika looks at Alia for confirmation. Alia confirms her candidacy against Yuki in the next year's elections. Before they can discuss further, their food arrives. After dinner, they all go their separate ways, with Kenzaki and Yuki heading off together, leaving Masachika to walk Alia home. On the way, Masachika asks Alia if she is really running against Yuki, but she seems reluctant to discuss it and tells him she'll go the rest of the way alone. Masachika says goodbye and heads home, only to find Yuki sprawl on the couch reading a romance novel. It turns out that Yuki is actually Masachika's real sister, but she pretends to be his love interest to make Alia jealous and want him more. He tells her he doesn't need her help and goes to sleep. The next morning, he is woken up by his annoying sister once again, who jumps on his bed and tells him to get up even though it's a Sunday. This bothersome brat drives Masachika all the way to a mall for a good breakfast, but then she insists he watch a movie with her. When he refuses, they head to a nearby clothing store, where he notices a change in Yuki's behavior. Curious, he asks her about it, and she explains that she noticed Alia following them and decided to stop acting like his sister. As he ponders what to do, Yuki moves towards Alia and greets her warmly. Alia, quite embarrassed, pretends she just happened to be shopping for clothes and ran into them by chance. The bratty sister asks Alia if she has had lunch yet, mentioning they were about to go to a restaurant and inviting her along. She then inquires if Alia likes spicy food. Poor Alia has only had mildly spicy curry and claims she is fine with spices. Yuki tells her they are going to a ramen place known for its spicy food and invites her to join. Masachika decides to be honest and warns Alia that the ramen there isn't just normally spicy. It's insanely spicy enough to feel like lava is coming out of anyone's ass. Alia suspects that Masachika is trying to distance her from spending time alone with Yuki, so she decides to join them anyway. They head to the ramen restaurant, which terrifies Alia as she has never seen such a sinister-looking place before. Masachika warns Alia that she's making a mistake, but she remains resolute and enters with them. Soon, they each order a bowl of ramen. Alia notices that Yuki is dressed quite boyishly today. Seizing the opportunity, Yuki tells Alia that she was in bed with Masachika this morning and borrowed one of his shirts for the day. Masachika spits out the water he was drinking while Alia glares at him. He tries to explain that Yuki had just jumped on his bed while he was sleeping, but Alia doesn't believe him for a second. Thankfully, the ramen arrives just in time, shocking Alia as she has never seen something so red and spicy. Yuki and Masachika seem unfazed as Yuki tells them to dig in before the noodles get soggy. Determined not to be left behind, Alia grabs her chopsticks, cools the noodles down a bit, and quickly gulps them down. The spice hits her instantly, but she pretends to be completely fine. Masachika and Yuki start eating and don't find the spice overwhelming, as they are used to it. However, Masachika hears Alia mumbling in Russian about how insanely hot it is and gets worried, asking her to stop eating so they can get something else for her. Alia mentions that she enjoys the heat immensely, even as Masachika notices her eyes watering and hears her pleading for help in Russian. Before he can respond, Yuki inquires about Alia's opinion of the dish. When Alia says she enjoys it, Yuki gives her the hot sauce. Masachika advises Alia against it, but determined not to back down, she adds a small amount of sauce to her noodles and takes another bite. This time she screams uncontrollably and dashes out of the restaurant. Masachika follows her to a nearby park and checks if she's okay. Alia insists she is fine, but when Masachika offers to get her some ice cream, she eagerly agrees. He buys her a triple scoop, which she enjoys far more than the fiery ramen. As she eats, Masachika asks why she wants to become the council president. Her mood soars and she curtly replies that she just wants to try. When he inquires if she has a partner, she asserts that she doesn't, claiming she doesn't need one and can handle it all on her own. He explains to her that it doesn't work that way, as she needs someone to run for vice president with her. She responds that she will find a random person and put their name down in the register, thinking it will suffice. Under her breath, she mutters in Russian that she wants him to be her partner. Finishing her ice cream, she asks Masachika if he has any plans, as she wants his help shopping for clothes. Masachika agrees, claiming they are friends, which surprises her a bit as she wonders if he pities her, thinking she doesn't stand a chance against Yuki. Determined to impress him with her fashion sense, she angrily heads into the changing room but gets cold feet, worrying that he might not react at all. Nonetheless, she steps out, and to her astonishment, Masachika immediately compliments her, saying the dress makes her look even prettier than usual. This leaves her stunned as she quietly closes the curtains and starts panicking, while Masachika also feels embarrassed by his own words. Alia decides to keep going and starts changing into different dresses. He compliments each dress, making her feel even better. She finally decides to try something more revealing and opens the curtains to pose, only to find that Yuki has also arrived. She quickly retreats and shuts the curtains, feeling embarrassed and wanting to crawl into a hole. Later that evening, they head back together on the train, but Alia is too frazzled to talk. When Yuki and Masachika's stop arrives, they bid her goodbye and get off the train. Alia starts berating herself for wearing something so skimpy, worried that Masachika will think poorly of her. Suddenly, she realizes that both of them got off at the same station, leaving her to decide whether to spy on them. That evening, Alia returns home looking a bit downcast, but she's immediately embraced by her sister, who hugs her and asks how her day was. Alia sluttishly replies that it was fine before retreating to her room. However, Maria is not so easily deceived and asks Alia if something happened because she isn't acting like her usual self. Alia takes a deep breath and says that she just came back after meeting Masachika and his childhood friend. Maria immediately starts smiling, realizing this is about a boy, and asks Alia if she likes him. Alia quickly defends herself, saying that she has no such feelings for him and insists they are just friends and nothing more. Maria starts laughing and asks how this guy managed to capture her heart, considering she never liked being friends with anyone who was a lazy slacker and always wanted her friends to be perfectionists. Alia realizes Maria is right, recalling how 6 years ago, when she was still in Russia, they were assigned a group project about learning the intricacies of local businesses. She eagerly divided the group tasks among her friends and meticulously planned everything out, wanting their report to be the best in the class. She followed the schedule perfectly and collected data on several businesses alone on Sunday, but when she returned to school on Monday, she found out that none of her friends had even started thinking about it. She gets frustrated and tells them that the report will take a lot of time to write, but her friends seem unconcerned, claiming they have a full week to work on it. Abruptly, the blondie notices her work notebook and grabs it, exclaiming that Alia has practically written an entire essay already. They advise her to relax, as it is merely a school assignment, but Alia, being a perfectionist who cannot relax, insists they take it seriously. This leads to a major argument with the blondie, who tells her to do it all by herself if she wants to be such a perfectionist, and then storms off. Later that evening, Alia stays up late continuing to work on the report and does so every single day until finally, the results of the reports are revealed. Another group ends up winning because their report was more cohesive. Alia holds back her tears, clutching the group work she did all by herself. As she walks home with tears shimmering on her cheeks, she resolves that from now on, she will never rely on anyone because they will always let her down. After that, she passes a very difficult examination and transfers to Japan, where on her first day she gives a speech at the ceremony, instantly becoming a favorite. When the class was about to commence, she noticed Masachika for the first time, dozing at his desk without a care in the world. She woke him up, informing him that the class was about to begin, and he groggily told her that her speech was fantastic. She introduced herself very politely, as she anticipated everyone at this highly prestigious school to be perfectionists like herself. Gradually, the pretense faded as she realized that most students here were slackers too, and Masachika was the biggest one. Never bringing the right books, always falling behind in physical education, and literally sleeping through the entire math class. Soon, she began retreating into her shell and stopped talking to others because they were disappointing her once again. As the seasons changed, the school festival arrived. They all divided duties and started working on it, but even though they were behind in all aspects, the students remained very relaxed and went home. While Alia worked overtime sewing the banner, she hurt herself and put on a band-aid when suddenly the door flung open and Masachika entered the room. Alia is astonished to see him after school ends, but he asserts that she shouldn't overexert herself and should return home. At this moment, Alia is quite irritable and tells him to mind his own business, as she has a lot of tasks to complete. He reassures her not to worry as he has arranged everything. He used some connections to obtain permissions to stay overnight at the school. He also befriended some members of the handicraft club and convinced them to assist with the festival preparations. Now there are many people available to help. He advises her to relax and go back home, but her emotions finally surface as she tears up and declares that she can't relax because she wants to organize a festival that people will truly enjoy. He tells her that she is misdirecting her efforts, claiming that she is trying to do everything alone. She rises and exits the room, pondering what on earth that guy's issue is. The following day, however, presents a complete turnaround from what she was experiencing, as Masachika somehow inspires everyone to give their all for the festival. They begin brainstorming countless ideas for attractions, staying late at school, having fun, and collaborating. Gradually, Alia starts to open up to her classmates once more. The day of the festival finally arrives, and it proves to be a massive success, with their attraction winning the Best Attraction award by a significant margin. The festival concludes with a student dance, where Alia finds Masachika sitting alone. He asks why she is not dancing as everyone would want to dance with her, but she replies that she doesn't want to dance at the moment because all the boys keep pestering her about it. Masachika chuckles and tells her that due to her demeanor, everyone has started calling her the Ice Princess. However, Alia doesn't seem excited about it. She argues that she dislikes being called a princess because it makes her feel like she was born with everything, even though she has worked diligently for all she's accomplished so far. Masachika grins and tells her that he won't use that term. Alia then turns to him and apologizes for snapping at him the other day and asks if there is anything she could do to express her appreciation. Masachika assures her that she doesn't need to do anything since she was the one who put in the most effort. Nevertheless, Alia insists that she needs to repay him for his generosity. Suddenly, a group of boys appear behind her, and the incels start pestering her for a dance, pressuring her even though she didn't want to. Masachika decides to intervene, takes her arm, and runs onto the grounds, asking Alia for a dance as her thanks. Finally, we return to the present, where Maria remarks that it sounds like the beginning of a beautiful love story, but Alia again insists that he is just a friend because he is competent and can get things done. Maria, however, is not convinced as she smiles at her. The next morning, Masachika heads to the student council to fill in for Yuki, who didn't show up that day. There, he encounters Maria, who mentions that she's heard a lot about him and asks for his assistance in shopping for supplies. He agrees and she promptly thanks him and grabs his hand. Suddenly, she feels a familiar sensation, as if she has met him before, and asks for his full name. Masachika tells her, and she immediately realizes something but keeps it to herself. She then tells him in Russian that they should get going. They start walking and enter a shopping mall, where Maria completely forgets her purpose and begins looking at various stuffed toys to buy for the student council. She picks up a cat plushie and also considers a lion wearing glasses for the council president, but Masachika informs her that he wouldn't be a big fan. As they walk back, Maria enters a tea shop to sample different teas. While she is tasting various brewing methods, Masachika suddenly recalls how his parents separated when he was young and how he decided to stay with his father, while Yuki chose their mother, causing the siblings to be separated. He snaps back to reality to find Maria looking worriedly at him. She tells him he looks distressed and immediately hugs him, stroking his hair. This completely shocks him as he feels a wave of nostalgia, wondering why this feels so familiar and comforting. His reverie abruptly ends when he gets burned by the hot teacup, still pondering why Maria's touch reminds him of his childhood. Later that day, they stroll back over to the student council room where the president instantly notices the large toy in Maria's arms. He informs her that the student council should be a place to store plush toys, but Maria seems indifferent and keeps telling him that she wanted to get him a lion. The president nervously approaches the shopping bags, wondering what else Maria might have bought. Fortunately, the remaining items were regular school supplies, which brought him some relief. He thanks Masachika for assisting them in purchasing the supplies, as he doesn't trust Maria to shop alone, and Masachika completely understands this, knowing that Maria would have turned the council room into a complete theme park if left unsupervised. The president reiterates to Masachika that he should reconsider his decision to join the student council, as they need capable individuals like him. Maria appears to agree, suggesting that he should at least join them on paper. Masachika asks why they are so determined to have him join the council. The president responds that he believes Masachika has a unique talent for organizing things, which is crucial for the student council. He mentions that Masachika was an excellent vice president during junior high, and Masachika replies that while serving in that role, he realized there were no real ambitions or goals he could achieve if he continued in that position. The president tells him that goals don't need to be perfectly aligned with the goal of working at full efficiency. He explains that he joined the student council not because he wanted to transform the school for the better, but because he wanted to win the affection of the girl he liked. He pulls out his phone and shows Masachika a picture of a chubby-looking person. Initially, Masachika doesn't recognize the chubby person, but Ken claims it is none other than himself from 2 years ago. Masachika is astonished at the incredible transformation, while Ken explains that 2 years ago, he was a loser with poor grades and no talent in sports. However, he fell in love with a beautiful girl named Sarah, the vice president, who was way out of his league. So he decided to improve himself to become a suitable match as a boyfriend for someone like Sarah. Becoming the council president was just a step in achieving that dream, so his motivation to join the council was very self-centered. Masha joins the conversation and tells Masachika that she also joined the council just because she was friends with Sasha and wanted to talk to her more, claiming that everyone who joins the council has their own selfish reasons, and that's completely fine. This seems to change Masachika's mind a little. Ken tells him that it's perfectly fine for him to join the council, even if his sole goal is to help someone become the president. Misachika looks at a smiling Ken and asks for some time to think it over. He then realizes that Alia hasn't arrived yet, but Ken informs him that she will probably be late today as she has gone out to mediate a conflict between the soccer and baseball teams as both want to use the field. Misachika immediately leaves the council room, wondering if he should check on Alia to make sure she's okay. Meanwhile, Alia is not faring very well as both the soccer and baseball teams are at odds, exchanging insults like in a Call of Duty lobby. When Alia asks them to speak politely, she attempts to suggest using a smaller field by the river, but neither team is willing to go there. They start arguing again, ignoring Alia's pleas. She realizes that she has always worked alone and, as a result, has no idea how to handle people or get them to listen to her. Tears begin to roll down her cheeks as she questions her suitability for the student council. At the same time, Misachika arrives and overhears the heated argument. Although Alia has failed to mediate, Hughes thinks it is a valuable experience for her and is about to leave when he hears her call out for help in Russian, which only he understands. He decides to step in, introducing himself as the student council member in charge of general affairs. Alia looks surprised but relieved to see him as he quickly takes control of the situation. He declares that since the baseball team has fewer members, they will move to the smaller riverside field, but in return, the soccer team members will help move their equipment. Initially, both teams are uncertain about this compromise, but the soccer team managers volunteer to help the baseball team, and the sight of a few willing helpers soon softens the baseball team. They eventually agree to the compromise. Later that evening, both Misachika and Alia start walking back while Misachika apologizes for intruding on her matters. She responds that she appreciates his involvement in her affairs and asks if he knew the managers would decide to help the baseball team. Misachika smiles and reveals that the captain of the baseball team is currently dating the manager of the football team, which is why he stayed quiet, as he wanted to support his girlfriend. Meanwhile, the manager was confused about what to do since she knew the soccer team's demands were excessive. Misachika explains that he simply offered them a compromise that both the baseball captain and the manager would accept, and the plan succeeded. Alia looks at him, impressed by his perceptiveness, when they run into Ken, who asks if everything got sorted out. Misachika immediately realizes that Ken orchestrated everything from the beginning as he asks Misachika for his decision about the council. Misachika takes a deep breath and tells him that he is ready to join the student council, which shocks Alia. Ken tells him to come to the council immediately to get his joining form. Later that night, as they start walking back, Alia asks Misachika if he is joining the council to help Yuki become the new president. Misachika asks what she would do if he decided to help her. Alia takes a deep breath and tells him that she won't back down and will fight against him to become the new president. This makes Misachika smile, and he tells her that he has decided to help her become the new president instead of Yuki. This catches Alia off guard, while Misachika promises that he will help her become the president of the council no matter what, and offers her his hand. Alia wipes away her tears and takes his hand before smiling at him, causing his heart to feel something he hasn't felt since he met that blonde girl in his childhood. Suddenly, Alia twists his hand, asking if he was thinking about another girl right now, making Misachika sweat as he wonders what to say. She asks if he was thinking about Yuki, and he immediately denies it, but she thinks he's lying and delivers a hard slap, knocking him to the floor. She then walks up to him and helps him back to his feet before they start walking together. When they finally reach Alia's apartment and the time to say goodbye comes, Alia asks if his cheek is still hurting. He claims it's just stinging a little and that he should be fine since he has experience with getting pepper sprayed by girls. Alia decides to relieve some of the pain by walking up to him and planting a light kiss on his cheek, making him blush as she walks away, claiming it was just a friendly kiss. Misachika can't believe what just happened as he stands there blankly, wondering why this Russian girl is playing with his heart like this. Misachika was worried that he might have said something silly or cheesy in front of someone he wanted to impress, but he was sure that Alia had said she loved him. This made him wonder if the things she said in Russian were serious and not just jokes. Alia had seemed very sincere when she said it that day. However, Misachika found it hard to believe that someone like her could love him because of his low self-esteem. He preferred to think that Alia had just gotten caught up in the moment. He imagined her later screaming into her pillow out of embarrassment. Having grown up watching his parents argue, Misachika saw love as fragile and unreliable. He had promised to stay by Alia's side, but still felt guilty for leaving his sister to carry the family name alone. When he got home, he noticed Yuki's shoes at the entrance, even though she had said she wouldn't be home. He went to the bathroom and found the door open with Yuki undressed inside. She screamed and called him a pervert, but Misachika suspected she had done it on purpose. She later admitted it was intentional because they had never had that typical brother walks in on sister moment, and she thought it was something every pair of siblings should experience at least once. Misachika told her that it only made sense in her otaka fantasies, but Yuki was determined to play out the scene. Yuki was determined to carry out her scene to the end, even looking at an imaginary camera to take that fan service photo. Misachika grumbled, but Yuki ignored him and explained that this was payback for a prank she had played earlier. Misachika warned her that he didn't want his reward to involve seeing her undressed. Yuki insisted he had peeked, but he said seeing everything at once wasn't exciting and that a true expert would take a quick glance after the initial shock. Surprised by his comment, Yuki composed herself and agreed with him, but she still wanted to know if he had looked. Feeling cornered, Misachika admitted he had glanced at her milkers, which led to round 2 of their playful argument. Later, in Misachika's room, Yuki asked if he had finally decided to join the student council. He admitted he had, but said he would support Alia for president. This upset Yuki, making her feel like she was losing her brother to the Russian girl. She couldn't understand why she wasn't enough to keep her brother's attention or if Alia had some charm she didn't know about. Misachika asked his sister to be less explicit in her descriptions, but Yuki kept teasing him. She joked about whether he wanted to be the first to hunk her, but then remembered something from elementary school. The mood turned serious as Yuki recalled a day during a game of tag when they collided and Misachika accidentally touched something he shouldn't have. Misachika was amazed that he hadn't knocked the wind out of Yuki, considering she had asthma, though today she seemed healthy enough not to even catch a cold. Misachika remembered that his sister, Yuki, used to be quieter. When he brought it up, Yuki panicked and told him to be kind to her instead of criticizing what she did or didn't do when she was younger. She handed him her hairbrush, and he brushed her hair without complaining while apologizing for supporting Alia for student council president instead of her. However, Yuki didn't mind and actually liked the idea of having a sibling rivalry like in stories. Still feeling guilty, Misachika reassured her that he still cared about her. Yuki had no doubts about it. Although they were now rivals, Yuki made it clear she was willing to forgive him if he changed his mind about supporting Alia. Misachika felt uneasy when his sister called it betrayal, but promised he wouldn't abandon his Russian friend. On the other hand, Yuki was confident that her brother would eventually change his mind. After saying goodbye, Yuki left his room, feeling disappointed that she wasn't the one to inspire him, but she pretended not to care as much in front of him. However, she didn't like losing. The next morning, Misachika woke up wondering if he had hurt his sister during their conversation the previous day. Knowing that Yuki was emotionally fragile, he planned to make it up to her for not supporting her. But Yuki seemed fine even playing a prank on him, though she got stuck under the bed while doing it. Instead of helping her out, Misachika decided to smother her and end her life once and for all. Later, Alia is lost in thought, eagerly anticipating the arrival of the boy she likes. When a man enters the room, she gets startled, thinking it might be Misachika. She tries to stay calm and act normal, but is briefly scared again when Misachika actually arrives. She quickly pretends to be unfazed, hiding her true feelings. However, it's becoming harder for her to ignore the special glow she sees around him. When Misachika sits down at the table and chats with his friends, he seems unusually upbeat. The Russian girl wonders why he didn't come in yawning like he usually does. She suspects he's adjusting his behavior to be more like the person he mentioned yesterday. Meanwhile, during a volleyball game, Alia is daydreaming when a teammate calls her attention to the ball coming her way. She quickly jumps up and spikes it, scoring the winning point. In the boys' game later, Misachika isn't as lucky. He gets hit in the back of the head by a ball during his team's serve. Rubbing the bump on his head, he tries to shake it off even though his stomach growls with hunger. Alia comes over to check on him and he assures her it's nothing serious. For some reason, Alia places her hand on her own forehead and then on Misachika, giving him an unintended view of her chest. Then, Alia ties her hair up, accidentally revealing a glimpse of her armpit, which drives him even crazier. Alia asks why he's acting strangely, and he pretends everything is fine. She then suggests he drinks some water, which he does with her by his side. Just like Alia, Misachika is finding it hard to stop staring at his friend, trying his best to hide his true feelings as he takes a big gulp of water amidst it all. Maria meets a guy who's gazing at the clouds. He talks about the blue sky and everything around it, but deep down he's only thinking about how much he likes gym uniforms after today. Maria asks if he has a towel to dry off from the water fountain, but he prefers to let the sun do the job. Without asking, Maria pulls Misachika's head down and starts drying his hair with her towel, giving him a bright view of heaven. He thanks her and jokes that he now knows how a dog feels after a bath. Masha responds that she's always had a soft spot for dogs. Feeling jealous, Alia pulls her friend back to the classroom and asks Maria to do the same. On the way back, Misachika wonders what's happening and closes his eyes, expecting a scolding when Alia talks to him. However, Alia is just checking if he's feeling better, showing the same kindness as before. Curious, Misachika asks if she's being too nice, and Alia replies that she's worried because he's been acting strange all day. Misachika is about to say he's fine, but his stomach growls loudly, making Alia think he skipped sleeping in class because he was too hungry. Misachika explains that he actually slept well last night, which makes Alia furious because she hardly slept, thinking about what he said while he slept peacefully. Misachika notices Alia's frustration as she walks away, recognizing her familiar demeanor. Later, he asks her to visit the student council room, but she's too upset to respond, though she heads in that direction anyway. He follows quietly, and when they arrive, he's surprised to see the soccer and baseball players behaving like soldiers outside the room. Confused, Misachika enters and comes face to face with Chizaki Sarashina, who's holding a bamboo sword. He tries to back out, but Chizaki stops him and explains that she was angry, mistaking him for the rowdy athletes she's been dealing with. Chizaki is furious because a junior student she sent to calm the teams down was ignored, leading her to physically discipline some of them with the bamboo sword. Though Misachika thinks this is over the top, Chizaki laughs it off, confident that no real harm was done. Misachika forces a laugh, knowing Chizaki's tough reputation, which has earned her the nickname Big Sis among some boys. Kenzaki steps in to defuse the situation, explaining that Chizaki didn't actually hurt anyone, just scared them into behaving. Annoyed by this exposure, Chizaki playfully slaps him, which he humorously pretends was painful. Maria arrives, urging the couple to behave, leading to an apology from Chizaki. Chizaki, still feeling guilty, promises to control her strength, while Kenzaki jokingly offers to be her punching bag if needed. The couple shares a tender moment, leaving Misachika bewildered by how quickly the situation turned romantic. Alia joins in the laughter, and as Maria remarks on how well the couple gets along, Alia blushes. Finally, Yuki arrives, and the student council meeting begins with the president asking the newest member to introduce himself. He does so, mentioning that he plans to run for the presidential election alongside Alia. Beyond his name, he asserts to be an avid consumer of otaku media and is open to discussing it if anyone wants to get to know him better. That said, the president announces that the young man is officially a council member. As his first task, the newcomer is assigned to assist the older Kuju's sister, Maria. Finally, Kenzaki assures that Misachika will quickly adapt to the new role thanks to his experience as vice president. Nonetheless, it will be intriguing to see him back on track working with the girls. By the way, there are not enough members to meet all the council's service demands, so it's a good opportunity for the newcomer to prove his worth. Yuki interjects to say she's heading to the art club to discuss their next exhibition, and since one of the topics will undoubtedly be the project budget, she'd like to take Alia, the organization's treasurer. Alia accepts the proposal and the president gives the green light. Soon, the two set off alone for work, and Misachika is sure some trouble is brewing. No wonder Alia feels the same way, and while heading to the task, she can't resist and calls Yuki for a chat. Yuki agrees but requests that it be in a nearby empty classroom. Inside, the Russian girl once again declares her intention to run for president alongside Misachika. Not as an apology or anything, since she doesn't believe she's done anything wrong, but she still thinks she should say it personally to Yuki. Yuki agrees there's no reason to apologize, especially since Misachika himself chose this path. Whether true or not, the boy's sister says she has nothing to say about it, and much less wants to vent any frustration on her colleague. However, she confesses she felt bad for not being the one he chose for the election. But Yuki goes further by stating she loves the boy, which leaves the Russian girl astonished. To make matters worse, she underscores that she loves him more than her own parents and provokes her peers by asking if she loves him too. Alia is more sparing with words, replying that Misachika is just a friend, but Yuki insists on knowing if the girl is in love with her brother. Without holding back, she pushes Alia until she gets the answer she wants, literally cornering the girl against the wall. Yuki manages to get Alia to admit that she doesn't know if she's in love or not. After a brief pause to muster courage, the Russian girl confesses that she won't let Yuki have him. With that, Yuki closes her eyes with some disdain and is pleased to have received that response. She then calls her council colleague to accompany her to the art club. Taking advantage of being alone since she heard Misachika and Maria calling the Russian girl by her nickname, Yuki decides to do the same. In return, she also asks to be called by her first name. With that, whether they liked it or not, Yuki and Alia had an agreement. Meanwhile, Maria and Misachika work together, and the boy notices that Maria knows exactly what she's doing when it comes to showing results. On the other hand, the president's girlfriend is an absolute disaster, clumsy to the extreme. Kenzaki sees that things are not going well and tells Chizaki that there's a major restocking happening in the library and they need help to finish it, so he sends her there. Once she's gone, he feels compelled to explain why his girlfriend is like that. According to him, Chizaki has always been clumsy, but she excels in club and committee discussions. To avoid embarrassment, Misachika mentions that the council member has her strengths and weaknesses. With the president's departure, Maria suggests a tea break. She has everything needed to make a great drink, including milk, sugar, and strawberry jam. Misachika recalls that this jam is also used in Russian tea, so he wants a cup. He thought black tea was more common for Russians in winter, but the girl explains that it varies by family. Her family drinks it year-round, a habit from their mother. Misachika has a fondness for Russia, sparked by watching Russian movies with his grandfather. He studied the language intensely to speak with a girl he loved in his childhood. He enjoys the Russian tea, and it reminds him of his mother's love for the drink as he watches Maria eat the jam separately. Curious, he asks why, and she explains it's just a personal preference. Following her lead, the boy tries a spoonful of strawberry jam but finds it too sweet. Just then, Alia and Yuki arrive after finishing their task. Maria offers tea, which Yuki accepts immediately. Alia, however, is in a much less enthusiastic mood, having had a tough time with her best friend's sister. Noticing that the Russian girl sat too close to him, Misachika asks what happened. She explains that in her country, sitting at the corner of the table is considered bad luck. The girl sits so close that she pushes Misachika to the other side, while Yuki looks on with jealousy. Realizing he's in the middle of a tense situation, Misachika asks Maria if the superstition is true. She confirms, adding that single people who sit at the corner will never marry. The older sister asks if Alia has found someone to marry. Alia pretends she just didn't want to sit at the edge, then switches to her native language, saying it's too early to think about marriage. Misachika silently agrees as they are only 15 years old. Later, Kenzaki announces that the work for the day is done, and since the second-year students need to discuss something with the teachers, the freshmen can go home. Walking home with Alia, Misachika senses his sister did something wrong as the Russian girl seems irritated. He invites his friend inside to discuss her candidacy for president. Although she agrees quickly, she mutters in Russian, upset that this isn't a date. Clutching his chest, the Japanese boy is surprised to learn that's what his friend wanted. Inside the diner, Misachika asks why she looks so annoyed. She claims to be just tired, but soon asks if he's dating Yuki. He seriously responds that he's not and takes the opportunity to advise Alia. In truth, Yuki is just having fun with the Russian to see her reactions. Putting that aside, he brings up the candidacy issue, making it clear that at this rate, they won't be able to beat Yuki, who is very popular. Remembering when he ran against his sister years ago in another school, there were 6 competing tickets, unlike the 3 in his current school. In that election, out of the 12 people who entered, half dropped out of the Children's Congress a bit before the election. The Congress is a kind of debate contest held by the students, like if the school's baseball and soccer teams couldn't agree and had to debate in the Congress to decide. When this Congress presents presidential candidates, it becomes a preview of the election, and once they debate their policies and one side wins, the winner usually becomes the favorite for the student council race. Anyway, this race gets filtered down until only a few candidates for the student council presidency remain. But when Yuki began to stand out, everyone dropped out of the race against her. While Misachika was explaining all this, Alia was biting her straw in anger and tension and only realized it much later since she seemed more focused on her homeland than this conversation. He asked if she was listening, and Alia pretended she was just fascinated by the ice cream and got distracted. Alia was secretly enraged by her friend's behavior, overly praising the bull Yuki and almost declaring her the winner beforehand. To avoid looking bad, Alia pushed the ice cream idea and offered some to her colleague. He wanted a new spoon, but Alia didn't want to bother another waiter and forcefully fed him with her spoon, insisting it was normal in Russia. As soon as Misachika tasted the ice cream, he realized it was an indirect kiss. Misachika saw Taniyama pass by but stayed silent and returned to discussing the election. He noted that to beat Yuki, they needed a campaign that drew students' attention, like Kenzaki's successful strategy. Kenzaki had transformed from a bully kid to a top student, and this narrative of overcoming adversity won him support. Alia needed a similar story. They turned back to the table, unsure what to do with the spoon until Misachika admitted feeling nervous. Alia teased him, asking if this was common in Russia, to which she replied in Russian that she would only do this with him. Misachika was getting used to such responses, so he calmly returned to discussing the presidency. He suggested they craft a compelling opening speech for the student body to outline their strategy. Although Alia was unsure of what to say, Misachika advised being spontaneous and transparent to connect genuinely with people. Finding her captivating as she was, he expressed this, prompting Alia to ask for more compliments in Russian. Meanwhile, a spicy dish arrived and Misachika offered Alia some. Despite fearing embarrassment, she accepted a spoonful, leading to a fiery reaction as she accidentally ate an entire chili pepper. Calling him an idiot in Russian, she pretended to be fine but was burning inside, fueled by her desire to defeat Yuki in the election. She asked for Yuki might choose as vice president, but Misachika thought it didn't matter much, speculating it could be Taniyama, who had a strong track record. The next day, Yuki introduced Kimishima Ayano from Class 1C to the council. announcing she would handle general council matters alongside Misachika. He glared at his sister, suspecting her of plotting something. The following day, the new student council member confronts a guy with a passive-aggressive attitude, demanding to speak with him in a strangely formal way. After cornering him, she reveals that her master is deeply disappointed that Misachika is backing the younger candidate for the presidency, leaving Yuki behind. Misachika silently curses the old man who once warned that if he left, they would be nothing more than strangers, and he would no longer be allowed to call himself Yuki's brother. Despite this, Ayano clarifies that she wasn't sent by her master to say these things. She's here on her own initiative. As Yuki's assistant, it's her duty to assess any threats. Misachika mocks her excessive loyalty, asking if she's an unpaid samurai, but Ayano ignores the jab and insists she doesn't believe he intends to harm Yuki. Misachika responds that supporting Alia isn't about opposing Yuki, though it's an unfortunate side effect. Ayano declares on rivals, asking if he prioritizes his support for the Russian girl enough to betray Yuki. Without hesitation, Misachika confirms, causing a flicker of surprise on Ayano's usually stoic face. Showing his resolve, Misachika adds that he vowed to do everything in his power to make Alia the student council president. Ayano speculates that this might be because he has special feelings for Alia, but he denies it, saying he's doing it simply because he wants to. He asks the old man's servant to tell him not to trouble Yuki and to speak directly to him instead. Ayano understands the rival's perspective and asks if she can trust that Misachika's feelings for Yuki remain unchanged. He confirms they haven't wavered, and she thanks him before leaving. Misachika realizes his sister is deeply upset by the situation. Later in class, Takeshi shows off a new magazine featuring bikini models and asks Misachika to pick a favorite. Misachika, uninterested in idols, randomly points to one leading Hikaru to note she resembles Maria. This makes Misachika thoughtful, and he argues that the girl has a boyfriend. Hikaru teases him, asking if it would be okay to pursue her if she were single, which makes Misachika defensive. The tension escalates when Alia sneaks up behind him, calls him a pervert in Russian, and scolds him for looking at the magazine. Misachika explains that Takeshi brought it, but Alia reminds him he should have reprimanded Takeshi instead. To change the subject, Takeshi asks if Misachika would date Yuki, to which he replies that he wouldn't, as he prefers someone who is also his best friend. In Russian, Alia asks if that person would be her, unsettling the Japanese boy and making him recall his first crush. In fact, he would love to be with a girl who has a beautiful smile. His friends then add attributes that Alia doesn't necessarily possess, further embarrassing the Russian girl. To avoid driving her crazy, Misachika tells his friends to change the subject. However, one of them stands on the table and announces that none of this would matter if the girl were as attractive as Alia. Misachika loses his cool and tells the fool to calm down, but it's too late. Alia approaches and sarcastically apologizes for being just a pretty face with no charm, promptly confiscating the magazine. Meanwhile, Ayano tells Yuki that Misachika has refused to abandon the Russian girl in the race for the presidency, also informing her that if the master wants to say something, he should do it to his face. Yuki interprets this stance as an open declaration of war, while Ayano admits that the guy's intense assertiveness sent shockwaves through her. Yuki feels insulted and asks if Ayano is in love with him, to which she responds that she idolizes Misachika just like Yuki, but there are no romantic feelings involved. She simply wants to serve as a tool for him. Furious, Yuki observes that her assistant seems to be more of the submissive type, which Ayano doesn't understand. When the boss explains, Ayano thanks her for the honor and informs her that Misachika still sees Yuki as the most important person in the world to him. Yuki reacts by rushing to the window, almost shouting her love for him for everyone to hear, with sparkling eyes at how adorable her brother is. Despite knowing that the guy is determined to keep opposing her, she prepares to escalate things to boost the candidate's spirits. Ayano mentions that most students view her mentor as their favorite, and they see the Russian girl's candidacy as a challenge to Yuki, which stirs some resentment. The favorite wonders how Misachika will counter this and feels eager to confront her brother, the most talented member of the Su family, who has always outshone her but now faces his first potential defeat alongside the formidable Alia Kuju. Yuki vows to achieve 2 goals at once and then asks Ayano if she sounded like a final boss in a video game. Speaking of games, the council girls are playing poker with chocolate as chips, and Yuki asserts her dominance over the Russian. Observing the game, Misachika notes Yuki's quick thinking, while Chizaki loudly points out that Alia's intentions are easy to read. Misachika, annoyed by Chizaki's loudness, agrees and adds that while the Russian girl may have everything, she lacks a poker face unlike her sister. Chizaki also mentions that Maria is seen as virtuous, but exhibits some odd behaviors. When Misachika explains that Maria has her own unique charm, Chizaki loudly agrees, prompting Misachika to complain about the volume again. Ayano then arrives with more juice and Kenzaki remarks on her distinct way of behaving. The girl explains that she learned her ways from her grandparents, who once served Yuki's family. Admiring them deeply, she decided to follow in their footsteps from a young age and is now happy to serve Yuki. Misachika, uncomfortable with her cheerful servitude, asks her to stop and Ayano apologizes, her expression filled with affection instead of anger, which confuses him. Kenzaki asks why Ayano moves so quietly, and she reveals that her grandparents taught her that a servant should never draw attention. Maria sits with the boys after Alia tells her to leave, and Kenzaki worries things might escalate. Misachika reassures him that Alia is just enjoying the game, though her intense expression is hard to read. When the juice runs out, Maria releases Ayano from buying more and offers to get it herself, asking Misachika to join her since he's also being honored at the party. Yuki requests a brown cafe au lait. Alia wants red bean soup. Kenzaki asks for ginger ale, and his girlfriend chooses soda. Ayano simply asks for water. Impatient, Misachika urges the girls to hurry, and in the hallway, Maria thanks him for supporting her sister's candidacy, mentioning how much it means to have someone to rely on. The boy wonders if his older sister is avoiding the responsibility of supporting the younger one. Maria reassures him, saying she deeply loves her sister for her strong-willed nature. When they were younger, the older sister cared for the little one without acting possessive, understanding that living under constant stress is exhausting. Sibling relationships are tricky, and Maria doesn't want Alia to feel isolated, as their closeness sometimes leads to competition. Misachika understands this but can't feel inferior to Yuki, who openly shows her love and admiration for him. He tells Maria she seems like a caring sister, and she agrees but asks him to keep their conversation private. Misachika agrees, knowing Maria has a good reason for secrecy, unlike him, who plays the lazy role so no one relies on him. Maria gently strokes his hair, assuring him he's doing his best, which makes him feel warm inside despite his embarrassment. Later, after the meeting, Alia is approached by Taniyama Sayaka from Class F, who bluntly tells her she should be ashamed for taking the running mate Yuki had in mind, assuming it was just to spite her rival. Alia feels uneasy when the stranger implies she might have done something dishonest just to secure Misachika's support for president. Despite this, Sayaka remains firm, saying it doesn't matter how Alia manages it. What matters is that she dragged a lazy guy onto her team just to annoy the competition. As Misachika passes by and notices the rising tension, he steps in. Alia explains that the strange girl is accusing her of using him just to provoke Yuki, but Misachika clarifies that he joined Alia's campaign of his own accord. Sayaka, however, remains skeptical, questioning his motives since he had been slacking off for so long. Misachika admits he was slacking, but insists he volunteered willingly, and Yuki accepted without issue. He then demands an apology from Sayaka for insulting Alia. Instead, Sayaka challenges Misachika to the student congress, stirring excitement in the crowd. She asserts that someone like Misachika doesn't belong on the student council, especially not as vice president, and even calls Alia a puppet. Taking offense, Alia joins the confrontation, and Sayaka boldly declares she will defeat them both in debate. The following morning, Misachika and Alia approach the council president to disclose their encounter with Taniyama, leaving the president puzzled. He remarks that Taniyama is a well-respected and intelligent student, suggesting that outmaneuvering her in these debates would be challenging. While Alia appears unfazed, Misachika points out that there's little to gain since Taniyama isn't even in the running for president. However, Alia argues that it would still allow her to demonstrate her abilities and ideology against Taniyama in front of the student body, potentially garnering additional support. Later that day, Misachika and Alia review their strategy, with Misachika testing her by listening to her responses to Taniyama's criticisms until he's confident in her preparation. Just before leaving, Alia asks if Taniyama dislikes Misachika, but he gazes into the distance and replies that he believes they mutually respect each other and hold no grudges. In fact, she was a close friend of Misachika during middle school, which surprises Alia. She then asks why Taniyama would turn against Misachika, and he explains that Taniyama likely views him as simply trying to stir up trouble in the elections. From Taniyama's perspective, Misachika is abandoning Yuki at her peak to support another candidate without any apparent reason other than to create obstacles for Yuki and make the election more interesting, which Taniyama disapproves of. The next morning, as they walk toward the auditorium, they are approached by a Gen Z girl named Nono, who is a friend of Taniyama. She seems familiar with Misachika already and advises them to relax before walking ahead. Alia isn't too fond of the way she presents herself, but Misachika insists that she's quite popular among the students, giving her words significant influence. Alia understands that someone with connections could indeed pose a threat, but Misachika advises her not to worry about that and to concentrate on the debate first. The auditorium soon fills up with students from every class, all buzzing with rumors about the election. Alia begins to feel anxious at the sight of so many students, imagining they're all discussing how she's unfit for the position. She quickly spirals into thoughts about how she's never formed a meaningful connection with anyone, but Masachika snaps her out of it, urging her to relax. He reminds her that her true opponent today isn't Taniyama, but the ideal version of herself she wants to become. He tells her to take it easy, assuring her that if anything goes wrong, he'll handle it. This calms her down a bit, and soon they all take their positions as the debate begins. Kenzaki introduces both sides and asks the opposition for their perspective. Taniyama promptly steps up to the podium and, instead of targeting Alia, directs her focus on Masachika. She argues that the current student council members are chosen solely by the president and vice president, which opens the door to corruption, nepotism, and favoritism. She claims that students who have never accomplished anything, who get average grades and aren't good at sports, suddenly become members of the student council, elevating them above students who have worked tirelessly to achieve something. She continues, stating that student council members should be selected based on their grades and extracurricular performance by the teachers themselves to eliminate lazy slackers who do nothing but cause problems for everyone. This greatly impresses everyone as the entire student body applauds while Kenzeki invites Alia to counter these arguments. Alia confidently approaches the podium and begins presenting her perspective. She explains that the school takes pride in student self-governance because it demonstrates that the students here are mature enough to handle themselves. Furthermore, if Taniyama believes that the student council requires teachers' assistance for something as simple as selecting its members, it suggests she lacks confidence and doesn't think she can manage it on her own. Besides, academic grades aren't everything, as everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses. A student who is average academically might have exceptional social and problem-solving skills, which are crucial for the student council. Masachika realizes that Alia has secured her position, but Taniyama interrupts with questions. However, all of Taniyama's questions are easily countered by Alia, who remains calm, while Masachika smiles, knowing Taniyama saw him as her opponent in this debate when, in reality, it was always Alia. Taniyama struggles to hold her ground and asks what would happen if the president or vice president went rogue. But before Alia can respond, some students start causing a commotion, labeling Alia as an outsider and claiming that Taniyama is better suited for the council. This disrupts Alia's focus, making her forget her response. Masachika realizes that this is Nano's doing as she planted these students, and the trick has worked by shaking Alia's confidence. Taniyama pressures Alia to answer the question. Just as Alia is about to completely break down, she feels Masachika's hand on her back as he takes the microphone and claims that Alia seems to have lost her voice because she was deep-throating hot dogs last night. He asserts that he will continue the discussion, but rather than addressing the issues, he immediately launches into a stand-up comedy act and mercilessly mocks the poor president for no apparent reason. He insists that if the decision of who joins the student council were left to the teachers, who would choose the top students, Kenzaki would never have become president because his grades were terrible and he was an overweight loser in his first year. However, since the student council values passion and talent, Kenzaki managed to overcome his weight issues and became the president that everyone admires today. With that, he drops the mic, and everyone looks at Taniyama for her response, but she doesn't want to be mocked, so she runs away, followed by Alia. Alia catches up to her later, only to find her crying. It turns out that Taniyama had been rooting for Masachika and Yuki to get together all this time, but suddenly Alia appeared and Masachika left Yuki as if it were nothing. This made her very upset because she always believed Yuki was the best since Yuki defeated her in the middle school presidential elections. So Masachika choosing Alia made her feel like even Alia was better than her. Alia understands her feelings but advises her to seek help from a psychologist. She then returns to the auditorium where she learns that the debate has ended and she has been declared the winner. She tells Masachika about what Taniyama said, and Masachika responds that Taniyama was one of the toughest competitors they faced during middle school, but she eventually accepted her defeat against Yuki and Masachika, thinking she could never beat them. Alia looks at him and declares that she will work as hard as possible to become someone Taniyama respects just as much as she respects Yuki, so that Taniyama can approve of her relationship with Masachika as well. Masachika smiles at this, but Alia questions him on why he chose her over Yuki, despite their strong bond. Masachika looks down, feeling sorrow as he recalls being separated from his sister and wanting to make it up to her by supporting her throughout life. However, he decides to keep this to himself and tells Alia that he never really wanted to be vice president and disliked being in the spotlight. He explains that he only did it because he owed Yuki a favor, but this time it's different. He genuinely wants to support and work with Alia, whom he believes would make an outstanding president. Alia seems very pleased with this conversation. When Masachika asks why she decided to run for president with him, considering how important it is, and that she could have chosen someone better, Alia responds in Russian. For once, even Masachika doesn't understand what she said. She immediately gets up and starts walking away, with him following, asking what she just told him. Alia smiles playfully and tells him to learn Russian if he wants to know. As night settled over a luxurious mansion, the family patriarch discussed the recent conference with Yuki, where Masachika had debated against Taniyama Industries. He remembered that this girl had competed fiercely with Yuki in the elementary school presidential election, so he expected great things from her. Not that she would withdraw mid-debate. Yuki calmly suggested she had her reasons, and the man understood that whatever they were, they lent legitimacy to Masachika's campaign. He reminded Yuki that she must not lose regardless of her opponent. The girl acknowledged her grandfather's words. He pointed out that while the girl might not be as talented as Masachika, at least Yuki understood the responsibilities that come with great gifts, responsibilities Masachika had abandoned. Despite his talents and privileges, losing to him was unthinkable. After this conversation, Yuki's mother asked if she was still close to Masachika. When Yuki confirmed she was, her mother was relieved and reassured her not to worry. Later, after closing her bedroom door, Yuki sought comfort from Ayano, demanding a hug and then nuzzling her face against Ayano's milkers until she felt better. The next day at school, the boys praised Masachika for his performance at the conference. As Masachika sat down, he noticed Elia was as distant as ever and remarked that the guys were curious about her exploits last week, though they didn't seem eager to start a conversation with the Russian girl. Masachika kicked his friend's desk to get his attention, and the friend quickly understood. The friend then asked Kuju if she had written her own speech, to which she responded, a bit surprised that she had. Impressed, the boy praised her skills. Soon, others joined the conversation, but two of them insulted Taniyama for leaving the debate early. Upset, Alia stood up and left. Masachika followed her to the student council room to see what was wrong, as it was clear the remarks about Taniyama had deeply bothered her. Alia turned around, ready to defend her debate opponent, but Masachika interrupted, saying they both knew why she had done it, and that they had done nothing wrong. They had competed fairly. He assured her there was no need to worry about what others said. Although Alia understood, she felt their victory was hollow since their opponents had simply given up. Masachika pointed out that if the goal was to help the girl recover, their victory at the conference would be meaningless. He conceded that what truly mattered was doing the right thing. Alia then expressed her desire to help Taniyama, gaining Masachika's support. He argued that it was better to address the issue now rather than delaying it, as it would lead to a smoother closing ceremony. Despite this, Alia was still worried about causing trouble for him. Masachika reassured her that he was by her side no matter what, which deeply touched her. Just then, he noticed the office chair swaying and realized someone was hiding under the desk. Kanzaki and his girlfriend had squeezed into the space, hoping to avoid detection, but they accidentally gave themselves away. Masachika thought it seemed like a scene from a romantic comedy, but decided to act as if he hadn't seen anything. However, another awkward moment unfolded as Alia stepped forward, forcing Masachika to distract her quickly. Left with no choice, he ordered Chizaki and the student council president to come out of hiding, making them promise that everyone would pretend nothing happened. Afterward, Masachika and Alia left the room, with Alia so embarrassed she quickly made an excuse and hurried away. Meanwhile, in Nono's classroom, she chatted with her friends about fashion while they all stared at their phones. Masachika, feeling out of place, rolled his eyes. One of Nono's friends invited her to a party on Sunday, but she hesitated because of upcoming exams. Despite this, she jokingly confirmed her attendance. Noticing Masachika watching, she called out to him, and he, embarrassed, decided to meet her in a vacant room to avoid drawing attention. Once there, she teased him, saying he didn't need to make such a big deal about asking her out. Surprised, Masachika asked if she actually wanted that. With the same boldness, she replied that she was single and liked him, but had never dated someone she genuinely cared for, as if she didn't quite understand love and romance. Masachika didn't want to get involved, but since he already was, he commented that she shouldn't be so carefree if she didn't like it. She responded that Taniyama had told her the same thing, but with a slap added in. They noted that people at school were gossiping about Taniyama, so it might be good to change that. Nono found it amusing that Masachika brought this up, considering she saw them as enemies. She even admitted to spying on the situation. Masachika was surprised that she would risk friendships like that, but she replied that the only friendship she cared about was Taniyama's. Masachika assumed that people like Taniyama, with their intense passion, must be a mystery to Nono. She added that those with qualities you lack will always be appealing. Nono believed that both she and Masachika were unhappy cynics attached to their radiant partners, so she joked about plotting something evil. Masachika, preferring to stay on the good side, suggested they spread a rumor to explain Taniyama's sudden exit from the debate. Nono pointed out that this could cast doubt on his victory. Misachika is already aware, and with nothing to lose, Nono agrees to the plan and leaves quickly. Suddenly, Ayano enters with Yuki, startling him. Yuki accuses her brother of getting close to Nono, their enemy, and admits they were eavesdropping. Misachika, not convinced, asks for the real reason. Yuki confesses she was faking a secret meeting, unaware a real one was happening. To make things worse, Alia appears, frowning as she sees Misachika talking to their opponents. Misachika asks her not to jump to conclusions, but Alia, pretending all is well, leaves upset, muttering in Russian. Yuki teases Misachika, saying it's typical of someone trying to deliver a thank you meal, but instead exposing a dark secret. Misachika tells her to stop imagining cliche scenes. In a flashback, Taniyama saw Nono with a different boy and confronted her. Nono, dismissive, said he was her new boyfriend. Taniyama slapped her, saying she should value herself more. Remembering this, Nono touches her face, thinking Taniyama was too angry. Back in the classroom, Nono spreads a rumor that Taniyama left the debate because she was mad after finding out Nono had planted spies in the audience. In another classroom, Misachika tries to explain to Alia that he bumped into Yuki and Ayano by coincidence, but she doesn't seem convinced, pretending to be pleased about the three childhood friends being so close. Tired of the tension, Misachika changes the topic and invites her to study with him after class. Alia, offended, asks if he's joking. Nevertheless, they end up in the student council room, where Alia sits uncomfortably close to Misachika. When he nervously denies there's an issue, Yuki and Ayano suddenly arrive, asking to join them. Alia mutters in Russian that she would rather be alone with Misachika, almost causing him a panic attack. During the study session, Alia notices Misachika only looks at the solutions instead of learning the material, so Yuki and Ayano explain that he's always studied this way. Shifting the conversation, Misachika asks Ayano if she has any questions. When she hesitates to admit it, he reassures her that he won't tease her. However, Ayano feels let down, wishing he had scolded her instead. Alia then asks if the three are really just childhood friends, as they seem even closer. Before anyone can answer, Maria enters with her famous tea, finds a book on hypnosis, and asks who it belongs to. Misachika explains that Shizaki took something from someone recently. The girl asks her sister to hypnotize her, but Alia ignores her, so Maria bothers Misachika, who reluctantly tries a hypnosis induction. He tells Maria to focus on his finger, saying she's getting sleepier. After clapping his hands, Maria falls into a deep sleep. Misachika quickly follows the book's instructions to wake her up by touching her shoulder, bringing Maria back to reality. Alia doubts the effectiveness of the hypnosis, so Yuki suggests she be hypnotized too. Misachika successfully puts Alia to sleep, even affecting Maria unintentionally. Yuki sees potential for fun and suggests a mischievous act, while Ayano imagines something more innocent, like uncovering a secret. Ignoring Ayano, Yuki induces the girls to become flirtatious. Maria pulls Alia and Misachika onto her lap, frustrating Yuki because she didn't expect Maria to take charge. When Alia starts to undress, Misachika taps her shoulder to stop her, but it doesn't work. Just then, Shizaki enters, sees the situation, and quickly slaps the hypnotized girls awake, then prepares to punish Misachika for what he witnessed. After all the chaos with hypnosis, a Russian-Japanese girl, and death threats, all Misachika wanted was some quiet at home to study. However, he couldn't focus because Brain Hazard, the hottest anime, was about to drop its latest episode. He tried to push it out of his mind and focus, but it wasn't working. A glance at the clock showed the episode was already out, and he found himself torn between fun and responsibility. Just then, Alia called for no particular reason. Teasing, he asked if she missed hearing his voice, and she replied in Russian, asking what was wrong with that. Hearing this, Misachika could only imagine collapsing to the floor. She knew he tended to act silly when alone, so she asked if he was managing to study. He admitted he was struggling to focus and asked how she stayed sharp in moments like this. To motivate him, Alia suggested a bet. If he placed in the top 30 on their exams, she'd do anything he wanted. If not, she would get her own request. Without much thought, Misachika agreed, realizing too late his mistake. He warned her up front he wasn't interested in any weird demands, but Alia brushed it off, saying in Russian that she'd just given him a clue. Misachika pretended not to understand, and they sealed the deal. Alia didn't seem too bothered by his recent outbursts, which had become more frequent, so Misachika pointed out that she was starting to annoy her big brother. Alia quickly reminded him they were the same age, but Misachika countered by noting that her birthday was on November 7th and his was on April 9th, making him technically older. After saying this, Misachika noticed Alia's enthusiasm fading, so he awkwardly said goodbye. As he hung up, he realized Alia had sensed he was losing focus and wondered if they were developing some sort of mental connection. In reality, Alia had called because she was scared after watching a horror movie but didn't want to admit it. What upset her more was learning Masachika's birthday had passed without him mentioning it, and something he said hurt her feelings. 5 days later, Masachika praised her exam results, but she responded coolly. To lighten the mood, he invited her to chat about the graduation ceremony on the way home. As they walked, Masachika found it strange that Alia hadn't flirted with him in Russian since the call. Curious, he asked why she was acting differently. Alia admitted she hadn't hidden her feelings well, but Masachika reassured her she had done a good job concealing them, though he had still noticed. Seizing the moment, Alia asked if he cared enough to pay such close attention, and he assured her that he did, as she was an important partner. Masachika's words softened her mood, causing her cheeks to flush. She needed reassurance that she mattered, and she still wondered why he hadn't invited her to his birthday. Gathering her courage, she asked. Masachika clarified that he hadn't had a party, assuming birthday celebrations were more of a Russian tradition, since he hadn't celebrated since elementary school. Seizing the chance, he asked if Alia really wanted to celebrate with him. She defensively explained that in Russia, not inviting someone meant they didn't care about them anymore. Though Masachika was skeptical, he invited her to a belated celebration to show their friendship mattered. The next day, they planned a party 3 months late and met up in town. Masachika was hot but preferred it to wearing his long-sleeve uniform. Alia mentioned the student council president was working on cooler uniforms, and Masachika noticed the stares they were getting. He realized Alia's beauty attracted attention and commented on it. She replied that it was the price of being attractive. He imagined she got approached often, and indeed, Alia said she did, usually responding in Russian until they gave up. Masachika was relieved she didn't fall for any flirtations, but she teased him, saying his possessive attitude almost made them seem like a couple. Masachika admitted that he tended to act like that on dates, which embarrassed Alia when she realized she was on a date with a boy she liked. She commented in Russian that it was her first time, though Masachika wasn't sure if she meant with him or in general. They soon arrived at a usually expensive restaurant offering great lunch deals. Inside, Masachika briefly explained the graduation ceremony. Student council president candidates presented their goals, followed by running mates supporting them. Though no formal vote occurred, audience applause determined the favorite. Alia asked if a candidate could receive no applause, and Masachika confirmed it was possible, expecting Yuki to receive more due to her popularity. Their strategy was to close the gap, though Alia thought it too defensive. Masachika preferred they speak first, as the first speaker often gets a quieter reaction. Alia disliked the idea and shot him a glare, so he joked about playing dirty. This softened her mood, and Masachika reassured her that Yuki wouldn't stoop to that, unlike Nono. Alia asks what he means, but their food arrives just in time, shifting their focus to celebrating the belated birthday. Soon, Alia suspects her running mate started the Miami rumor, but he claims it was her idea. Regardless, it buried the issue with Taniyama, along with the Congress results, which Alia regrets. She thanks her friend for supporting her, flustering Masachika. Alia, speaking Japanese for the first time, teases him for looking cute when embarrassed and feeds him a piece of meat. Others tense up, expecting a big moment, but Masachika eats casually, noticing Alia using the same fork without concern. After dinner, Alia gives him a mug, and he jokes it looks like a couple's item. She admits it's a matching set, with hers already at home, leaving Masachika flustered but composed. Back at school, they wait for a meeting, and Kenzaki suggests a new summer uniform. Maria makes tea and tells Ayano to relax. Kanaki announces the uniforms will be ready after summer, planning a surprise reveal. Yuki supports the idea, and the president credits Sarashina, who returns his affection, drawing them into their own little world. Maria awkwardly serves Masachika tea, and he senses she's still uneasy about the hypnosis incident. Just then, Kanzaki's parents arrive, signaling the start of their meeting. Maria offers to wash the dishes, and Masachika helps. While working, he apologizes for the hypnosis, but Maria reminds him it was her idea. She asks what she did while hypnotized, and Masachika says she pulled him and Alia in, stroking their heads. Relieved it wasn't worse, she teases him about watching them under hypnosis. To punish him, she pinches his cheeks. Her mom calls her for the meeting, leaving Masachika to finish the dishes. Back in the student council room, Yuki takes advantage of their alone time to talk. Before that, Masachika mentions he'll pick up his grandfather. Yuki hugs him, saying she's been lonely and wants attention. Masachika plays along until his grandfather calls to say he's arrived. Meeting him at the entrance, Masachika jokes about his white suit, to which his grandfather laughs, saying he forgot the sunglasses to complete the look. He explains he spent his pension on the outfit for today. Later, the grandfather inquires if Kuru is too occupied to visit today, and Masachika explains that he was recently assigned to the Japanese embassy in England. Amid this idle gossip, Alia arrives and is promptly caught off guard by Masachika's grandfather. The boy clarifies that this eccentric man has a fascination with Russia, while attempting to keep him under control beside the girl. Alia's mother finally introduces herself as Kuju Akimi and mentions that her daughter frequently talks about the boy at home. Embarrassed, Masachika hopes it's all positive things until he realizes his grandfather has vanished. The old man had wandered off to propose to the Russian girl on behalf of Masachika, asking her to marry him and join the family, forcing Masachika to rein in the old man's antics. Alia's mother also playfully teases her daughter about the marriage conversation. After the gathering, Masachika encounters a woman named Yumi, sparking a deep memory from his childhood. When greeted by Masachika's grandfather, she responds by calling him her father-in-law. Thrown back into a childhood memory, Masachika is racing to show Yumi the top score he got on a test, and she enthusiastically praises the boy. One day, during a stunning piano performance, Masachika receives excited applause from the whole audience, but Yumi appears strangely uneasy. This made the young Masachika realize that his performance wasn't enough to impress her, so he started practicing even more diligently. However, contrary to what he anticipated, Yumi grew irritated with the constant sound of piano music filling the house and told him to stop. With tears in his eyes, young Masachika stopped immediately, speechless. At that moment, he awakens from the nightmare, only to find himself with a cold. The doorbell rings, and when he goes to answer it, he finds Alia standing there. She had learned from Yuki that her friend was sick and had come to bring medicine at Yuki's request. Masachika reflects that his eccentric sister could have given him a heads up, but now Alia is in front of him asking to come in. Masachika replies that just the medicine is enough, practically pushing her away, but she insists that Yuki asked her to take care of him. Faced with this, Masachika imagines that his sister is trying to pull others into her otaku fantasies until Alia admits in Russian that she's lying about only coming because of Yuki's request. He lets her into the house, and as she stands nervously at the door to his room, Masachika tells her to relax, but she irritably responds in Russian that everything feels a bit new to her. She adds that the room smells like a boy. Then she asks if he prefers porridge or something else, perhaps soup, since the vegetables are cooked until they're soft, making it easier to eat when sick. He chooses soup, so she says it'll take 4 hours to be ready. Masachika grumbles about the long wait, and Alia admits a pressure cooker would be quicker, but says that's unacceptable. Masachika settles for porridge, and Alia goes to make it. While cooking, she spots him using the mug she gave him, and it makes her happy. Later, when Masachika has a fever, the porridge is ready. Seeing Alia in an apron serving him, he thanks her for the nice view, to which she sarcastically replies he seems fine already. She hands him the porridge, asking if he can eat on his own. Masachika eats without issue and compliments the taste. Embarrassed, Alia doesn't reply, distracted by her curiosity about his family. He explains his dad's at work and he has no mother. After eating and taking his medicine, Masachika says he's going to sleep and tells Alia she can leave, but she insists on studying in the living room in case he needs her. He was hinting she should go, but she stays to play nurse. After a nap, Masachika wakes up around 8 p.m., expecting Alia to be gone. But when he opens the door, he finds her with Ayano, who's dressed in her maid uniform. Seeing him awake, Ayano rushes to assist, but Masachika jokes about being careful around her chest. Alia, annoyed, orders Ayano to step back. Though she insists that helping him walk is part of her responsibilities as a maid, the Russian remarks that Ayano is Yuki's maid, not Masachika's. This causes Ayano to nervously explain that her mistress specifically asked her to look after Masachika, implying that Alia can leave the rest to her and head home. Masachika is taken aback by Ayano's boldness in addressing Alia like that. Meanwhile, the maid reminds her colleague that she needs to prepare for the next day. When Masachika asks what she means, Alia casually dismisses it, saying she just has regular classes, then gracefully bids them farewell. Keeping her composure, she asks Ayano to continue taking care of Masachika and departs. A little later, Ayano serves soup to the ailing young man, which Alia had prepared beforehand. After thanking her and tasting the dish, Masachika compliments the flavor, causing Ayano to blush lightly, much like the warmth of the soup. By 9:30 p.m., fatigue overtakes him, and he decides to skip his bath before bed. In response, Ayano offers to wash him while blindfolded. Masachika retorts that it's impossible to clean someone properly without sight, then lays down to rest. Ayano, realizing she's too energetic, suggests she sleep next to him or sing him a lullaby. Instead, Masachika orders her to return to Yuki's house and end the night, which she promptly obeys. The following morning, Masachika wakes up feeling much better and finds Ayano cleaning the floor at 11 a.m. He asks if she skipped school for his sake, to which she replies that her employer's health takes priority over any report card. She heads off to prepare lunch, serves the food, and sets the medicine on the table. Masachika notices something unusual and asks to see the medicine's packaging. It lists drowsiness as a side effect, prompting him to ask if Yuki sent Alia with it. The maid confesses the truth. Realizing the situation, Masachika hurries to school, overhearing two boys saying Yuki outdid Alia. He realizes he underestimated his sister, thinking she wouldn't act until the closing ceremony. He confronts Alia, who apologizes for ruining everything. After calming down, she explains that it all started yesterday when Yuki asked to meet her in the student council room. Yuki, claiming to be busy, handed Alia Masachika's usual medicine and his address. Yuki also invited Alia to participate in the lunch broadcast to discuss the Student Congress Live, giving Alia a chance to showcase her victory. Alia refused to bring up the debate, but Yuki insisted she join to help prepare the final report for the term. Feeling pressured, Alia agreed. Yuki then mentioned the rumor about Nono cheating, amused at Alia's efforts to downplay her Congress win. With a villainous grin, Yuki remarked that Alia seemed too at ease, sarcastically questioning if Alia really planned to win the elections as she failed to recognize the danger of entering her rival's domain. Yuki thinks Alia's lack of survival instinct makes her an easy target, prompting her to issue a warning, especially with Masachika bedridden. She felt Alia should be more alert. Surprised, the Russian girl realizes this and wonders if Yuki plans to take advantage of Masachika's illness. Yuki bluntly admits she intends to use the situation to hurt her rival's position. Alia's shock shifts to determination as she warns Yuki she's underestimated her. Unbothered, Yuki says Alia can rely on Masachika if needed, but Alia insists she won't. Yuki, eager, declares she looks forward to seeing what the Ice Princess can do tomorrow. After Yuki leaves, Alia vows not to lose. Telling this part of the story to Masachika, Alia explains she did her best, but something unexpected occurred after class today. Right before the live broadcast, Yuki apologized for her behavior the day before. Feeling guilty about her own scheming, Alia admitted she had been too aggressive, risking everything but realizing she didn't want to harm their friendship. Unsure how to react, Alia tells Yuki it's okay, accepts the apology, and asks her to raise her head. Yuki, relieved, explains that while it may sound like an excuse, her drive to become president stems from her older brother, whose talent their family had pinned all their hopes on. Alia teases that his speech resembled more of a love confession, and Masachika concedes, but the Russian admits that his words renewed her confidence even though Yuki carries the spirit of her late brother. Despite Masachika's outward composure, he's internally fuming at his sister for making the school believe he's dead. He attempts to set the record straight, but just then, Nono enters the room with Taniyama, both apologizing for their actions at the assembly. Taniyama also wonders if Alia intentionally left her name out of the broadcast to safeguard her reputation. Alia replies that she didn't want to take credit for a victory in a debate she hadn't won. Conversely, Taniyama feels she lost and wishes to announce her defeat at the closing ceremony. Masachika proposes a different approach, and after elaborating, both Nono and Taniyama agree to back Alia's campaign. With that settled, Masachika declares they now have a genuine shot at winning the election, vowing to utterly defeat Yuki as a matter of pride. In the following days, he and his partner concentrated on practical presentation rehearsals in the auditorium. On the final day before the trimester ended, Masachika assured Alia she was ready and only needed to replicate her training during the real event. However, Alia wasn't as confident. Despite performing well at the student congress, she believed it was only because she was deep in her own thoughts. Plus, tomorrow's crowd will be even larger. Masachika confirmed that the auditorium would indeed be packed, but stressed that it didn't change what she had to do. She just needed to focus on delivering her message. Still, Alia doubted herself, admitting that after watching Masachika at the Congress, she realized she didn't have the same knack for captivating an audience. Masachika honestly admitted he wasn't sure where his talent came from, though he believed experience played a big part. He shared a tip with Alia to break the ice and grab attention. Encouraged, Alia decided to try it during the presentation. Suddenly, Yuki arrived unannounced and commented on Masachika's intense expression. He replied that someone had tried to embarrass him but that they would soon be exposed. Incidentally, Masachika noted Yuki was that type of person, warning Alia not to be fooled. Yuki asked if Alia was upset, but Alia calmly replied it was normal for people to act differently in various situations. When Alia asked if Yuki seriously wanted to remain friends, Yuki gave a cynical yes. Alia mentioned she hoped that was true, as Yuki had given her a chance to reflect. Yuki had asked why Alia wanted to be student council president, and Alia promised to have an answer tomorrow. The council spokesperson noted that Alia's honesty finally shone through, making her intriguing. Masachika sarcastically added that he was thrilled they were still friends, to which his sister joked that she also enjoyed their relationship. She asked if he was upset, but Masachika thought targeting someone's weaknesses was just strategy. His feelings about his sister were mixed, like disciplining a dog for trying to bite but still teaching it a lesson. In this case, Yuki had missed her full strike. Kenzaki then entered, easing the tension as Sarah and Maria prepared to discuss one last thing for tomorrow. He asked about the speech order, recalling how last year's candidates decided it with rock, paper, scissors. Masachika didn't think it would work as you could read your opponent, so Yuki suggested a coin toss. Maria offered to toss it. The rule was simple. If Alia guessed right, she chose who went first. If wrong, Yuki would decide. As the coin was flipped, Yuki strategized if she spoke first and landed a powerful blow, Alia would follow with an already shaken audience. But if she went second, the first speaker might just receive polite applause. Yuki sought a crushing victory, believing she needed to speak first. However, it might be wise to hear her brother, who was highly skilled. Yuki noticed he tried to intimidate her, which was unusual since he typically avoided attention. Regardless, the coin landed in Maria's hand and Alia chose heads without hesitation, but it came up tails, leaving Yuki to decide. She wondered if her brother's threats were genuine or a diversion. It seemed Masachika tried to calm things down after Alia, visibly upset, was scolded. Knowing Alia's emotional fragility, he likely wanted to protect her, especially after yesterday's broadcast. Yuki concluded that the pressure on Alia would be unbearable if she spoke last, as Masachika probably aimed to go first and create a balanced outcome. With that, Yuki chose to speak first. The next day, during the closing ceremony, it was time for the student council presentation, starting with President Kenzaki. After remarks about the trimester and the upcoming summer break, the presidential candidates took the stage. Yuki, as planned, opened the debate. The lights dimmed and a spotlight highlighted the podium. After confirming Ayana was ready, Yuki stepped up, greeted the audience, and reintroduced herself as a candidate for next year's student council president. Some students immediately pledged their votes for her. She then announced her first proposal. If elected, she would establish a system for considering student feedback through a suggestion box. Although Yuki had been at the school for years, few students took advantage of her efforts, mainly because they didn't believe real changes would occur. This was understandable, as most council members were preoccupied with their new roles and neglected the students' needs. However, Yuki assured everyone she would make their wishes a reality. She proposed altering sports competitions, expanding festival events, and even introducing new ones like Halloween and Christmas. Having served as student council president in middle school, Yuki felt confident in her ability to bring these ideas to life. After her speech, Masachika commented that her promises were vague, but Kenzaki praised her delivery. Maria checked on her sister, who asked to be left alone. Next, Ayano introduced herself as Yuki's running mate and personal assistant, admiring Yuki's talent and kindness. Backstage, Masachika remarked that these girls were setting the stage before Alia could even compete, but the Russian girl remained focused, knowing it was her chance to make an impression as a student council leader. As Ayano finishes praising Yuki and concludes her speech, the two girls stand before the audience to receive their well-earned applause. Next up is Alia, the student council treasurer. As she approaches the podium, the crowd is still abuzz from the earlier speeches, assuming the outcome is already sealed. Suddenly, Alia surprises everyone by taking a deep breath and beginning her speech in Russian. The unexpected move grabs the audience's full attention. After a few moments, she switches back to Japanese, explaining that nerves made her start in her native tongue, prompting a few chuckles. The day before, Masachika had advised Alia to use this tactic if she felt they were running behind. He believed starting in Russian would reset the audience's focus after the previous candidate's speech. Alia then launches into her real presentation, admitting she lacks a political background since she's new to the school. While she may not yet understand all the council's duties, she assures the audience that she's ready to work hard and tackle any challenge. Alia confidently declares that she always strives for excellence and believes in aiming higher after every success. Remembering Masachika's words about her dedication and work ethic, she continues acknowledging her flaws but assuring the crowd that she's committed to improving one step at a time. She promises to withdraw her candidacy if she feels unfit for the role, but until then, asks everyone to observe her political actions. She finishes her speech to growing applause. Masachika congratulates her, saying it's time to win, and takes the stage. He reveals that he was pulling the strings behind the scenes when Yuki was president, striking a low-key, behind-the-scenes protagonist pose that makes the audience laugh. Relaxing the atmosphere, he confirms he was Yuki's vice president and says people must wonder why he's not running with her again. He explains that a council president needs charisma, and that's why he chose to back Alia over Yuki. To prove Alia's growing support, he announces Taniyama and Nano will join the council as officers if Alia wins, former debate rivals now working together. The two join him on stage, shocking the crowd. The group of four thanks everyone and is met with loud applause. Misachika credits Alia for the success. Afterward, Taniyama declares she's now even with Alia and won't help the campaign anymore, unlike Nomino, who says she'll support the new president, though she mispronounces Alia's name. Looking at her opponent, Alia resolves to become president and no longer be controlled by Yuki. Yuki admits her loss in this round, but the fight isn't over. Later, Misachika discovers he ranked 33rd in his grade, failing the bet to make it into the top 30. Now he has to follow Alia's requests, spoken in Russian. Annoying, Alia says she had wanted him to win. Flustered, Misachika asks her to use his first name, suggesting they're now seen as a team. Alia calls him Misachika, leaving both blushing and unsure how to act. As they walk out of school, Misachika mentions prepping for the election even during summer. Alia, in Russian, tells him to look at her and says it would be her pleasure. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe and check out this video about a man who everyone thinks is weak, but he destroys everything he touches in another realm.